Orange County. And today I'm going to be presenting the topic of first steps for new caregivers. And whether you are brand new to this, thinking about the future, or you've been doing this for years, being a caregiver is hard work and can be very overwhelming. I hope this presentation will be helpful to you, and we are going to cover a lot of information today, so try not to be overwhelmed. So before we really jump in, let's just take a deep breath and get ready, because it's going to be a lot of information. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, our topic is first steps for new caregivers, and I am from Caregiver Resource Center OC. And before we get into really the main part of our talk today, I wanted to let you know about the history of the Caregiver Resource Center. In Orange County, on the next slide, we've been serving Orange County since 1988, and we are a program through Providence St. Jude Medical Center. We are part of a California-wide system of caregiver resource centers, and there are 11 total. And we get our funding through the Federal Older Americans Act and Family Caregiver Support Program. On the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about our eligibility. I'm sorry, I got mixed up. Our mission here is to increase the quality of life of caregivers by helping families and communities master the challenges of caregiving, of which I'm sure you're aware there are many. And so the next slide talks about our eligibility to be a client with us. In order to receive services with the Caregiver Resource Center of Orange County, both you as the caregiver and the person that you're caring for need to reside in Orange County. And we define a caregiver as somebody who is an adult and they're caring for somebody who is over the age of 60 and needs help with at least 2 of their activities of daily living. Or you can be caring for somebody who is over 18 and has an adult onset cognitive impairment. That can look like dementia or Alzheimer's or other degenerative diseases, things like ALS or MS. And if you're not sure if you or your loved one would qualify for our services, just feel free to give us a call, and we always have social workers available to answer questions and provide support. The next slide has information about our services here at the Caregiver Resource Center. The services that we offer are support groups. We do caregiver assessment and care planning, a lot of education and training, which includes legal workshops. We also do individual counseling and can provide specialized information and referrals. And then we also are able to help with respite assistance when there's funding available so that you as a caregiver can take a break. The next slide talks about caregiver statistics. Oftentimes, being a caregiver, you may feel very alone and not realize that there's 43.5 million caregivers in the United States. And of those 43.5 million, 34.2 million are caring for somebody, they are providing care for somebody who's at least 50 years old. And the average age of a caregiver is 49, and 10% of caregivers are over the age of 75. Caregivers provide anywhere from 24 to 44 hours of care per week, which for some of you may be just maybe almost laughable, because you're doing this 24/7, and it really is a lot more than what the average hours are. And then when it comes to the breakdown between men and women, 60% of women are caregivers and 40% are men. But among millennials, it's really equal between men and women for the amount of caregivers. And then actually over half, 56% of caregivers work full-time still. And the next slide has our mantra here at Caregiver Resource Center, which is caregiving includes caring for me. And so that's really important to us to remind caregivers regularly that being a caregiver, a huge part of that is making sure that you're also providing care for yourself. And so with that, our next slide will be we're really going to start jumping into the information now. And like I said, we're going to cover a lot today. We won't go too in depth on one particular thing, but hopefully this gives you a general overview. And yeah, so we'll get started with first steps for new caregivers. A quote that we like to use a lot here at Caregiver Resource Center comes from the former First Lady, Rosalind Carter. Her quote is, "There are 4 kinds of people in this world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers." And that quote just goes to remind us all that at some point in our life, in some way, shape, or form, we will be affected by caregiving. And so with the next slide, we have our objectives for the class today. Really starting to understand the first steps of becoming a caregiver is one of our goals. And then to be able to give you the answers to these questions. Where do I start? What do I do? And with the next slide, a little bit of the caregiving journey. The caregiving journey can look very different for each person who's providing care. There are situations where caregiving sneaks up on you. Maybe it happens slowly, your loved one starts to decline, and you realize that they're needing more help. Caregiving can also start very acutely. Let's say somebody has a medical emergency or there's a crisis, and then you're thrown into becoming a caregiver. Also, caregiving can be episodic, it can be short term, it can be long term. And so everyone's on the same journey, but the situations are different that led to becoming a caregiver. And on the next slide, when you're starting out as a new caregiver, it is very hard to know where to begin. So again, you are not alone. What you're doing is really difficult. And especially when you're starting out, with the way it can sneak up on you, with those acute crisis issues that happen, it's just, where do you even begin? And again, maybe you've realized that your loved one needs more help, or there's been a sudden change in their health. And so on the next slide, again, our main priorities today are figuring out and hoping that you'll be comfortable saying that you're beginning to understand how to identify the needs of the person you're caring for, how to plan self-care and respite, how to identify resources, and how to find available support to match you and your loved one's needs. And we can't say it enough, the earlier you find support, the better. And we're going to talk about 5 core topics today. And on the next slide, we have those listed out. And we're going to start with finding a diagnosis, then talking about healthcare wishes and finances, getting others involved, community resources, and last but definitely not least is taking care of you too as the caregiver. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide and the start of our information, and that's starting with a diagnosis. So on the next slide, we can see more information about this, and starting with a diagnosis is important, as taking the time to get a good diagnosis can help you understand where your loved one is at now, as well as where they might be as time passes. This can help you prepare for your role as a caregiver and allow you to learn as much as you can. And by learning, you can anticipate what's coming, what's going to be ahead as your loved one's condition changes. And instead of feeling worried and uncertain, you can prepare. This gives you the chance to ask questions, to prepare your home for changes in your loved one's physical abilities. This gives you the ability to find resources to help in case the workload expands or things change. Starting with a diagnosis is really a great place to begin. And on the next slide, so Rachel, you're telling me start with a diagnosis, but what happens if I don't have one? I don't know how to get one established. And so if you've noticed changes in your loved one's health or their behavior, and if you have concerns that it might be time to intervene to support their care, the best place to start is with a medical professional. So talk to your loved one's doctor or medical team, and a neurologist or a diagnostic clinic should be able to help provide a diagnosis and a clear care plan. Once you have the knowledge and information related to your loved one's diagnosis, you can have a strong foundation that you can educate yourself and develop a realistic plan for your loved one's care as their disease progresses. Early diagnosis of cognitive impairments like Alzheimer's disease will allow you to begin treatment earlier, and early treatment can just be a little bit more effective and can help delay the progression of the disease. And the more time that you research and prepare for the eventual progression of any disease, the more that you will feel that you're prepared and that you feel like you're a more resourceful caregiver for the person that you're providing care for. So again, it's very, very important. Try to get a diagnosis for your loved one. That will help you learn more, feel more prepared, relieve anxiety and some of the stress that's associated with being a caregiver. On the next slide, we're going to talk about what we call activities of daily living. And these are areas that your loved one's doctor or medical team might ask you about in terms of how your loved one is functioning. And so there are two different categories that these things fall into. And the first one is ADLs. And so these are a bit more basic functioning things that we do day to day. And we will also talk about IADLs, which are instrumental activities of daily living. And those are a bit more complex, and you will more than likely start to see changes in those more complex functions before you start to see them in the ones listed on the screen here. And so things that you might be asked about are how well your loved one is ambulating or transferring, just generally their mobility, how they're moving, whether they are declining and needing more help with toileting or bathing, dressing, grooming. And then those more complicated and a bit more difficult tasks that you might start to see changes with would be communication. And this is on the next slide, is communication, transportation, shopping, cooking, cleaning, taking care of finances, managing medications, and enjoying leisure time. So you might start to notice some changes here. And take note of that and just kind of keep track of how your loved one's needs are changing over time. So that's our first part of this. And really, again, so starting with the diagnosis. And once you have that, you can move forward and start to work on things related to healthcare wishes and finances. And there's definitely a lot of information here, so bear with me as we talk through this. And again, I will make sure that you guys have resources for getting more information and really starting to get these things in place for your loved one. And so on the next slide, we talk about communication is key. When it comes to healthcare decisions and finances, communication. This will allow you to be able to talk with your loved one about their finances and healthcare wishes and allow you to develop a plan of care. There are many legal documents that come into play when it comes to planning your loved one's affairs and how things will be handled in the future. And many of these documents have very similar names, as if it wasn't confusing enough. A lot of these documents sound the same. And so make sure that you're getting the correct forms and be aware that each state has different laws. And so it's important to find out the rules, requirements, and what specific forms are used in your state. Some of the things we'll talk about related to healthcare wishes are advance directives and power of attorney, as well as finances and estate planning. So in the next slide, we're going to focus on advance directives. So an advance directive is a really important document, and it allows you to have a say about how you want to be cared for if you cannot speak for yourself. This is a legal document, and it lets you have a voice in your own healthcare. There are typically 3 parts to an advance directive. The first part is choosing a medical decision maker. This is somebody who can make decisions if you are not able to. A good medical decision maker would be a family member or a friend that you are comfortable with and trust. And they would need to be at least 18 years old, and they cannot be a direct part of your medical team. So the first part of an advance directive is choosing a medical decision maker. And the second part is making your own healthcare choices. So now that you've identified who you want to be able to help you, what kind of decisions do you want made? And quality of life differs for each person. For some people, the main goal of care is to focus on quality of life and being comfortable, and while others, it's to be kept alive as long as possible. So the second part of the advance directive allows you to decide what types of treatment you want. The third part of an advance directive has to do with signing a form. In order for your advance directive to be valid, again, each state has different requirements, but in California, you can have 2 witnesses sign this, or you can get the form notarized with a professional notary. And on the next slide, we'll get a little bit more into this advanced healthcare directive and what that all means. And you're going to hear a lot of these terms. And again, this is a lot of information. So just, take what you can from it. And this will be recorded. So you're always welcome to rewatch it and try to catch things that maybe just didn't make sense or you might have missed. And so an advance directive, you might also hear the terms living will, you might hear power of attorney. And again, the living will part of this is really the what. It's, again, making those healthcare decisions if you're too sick and you can't make your wishes known, stating what kind of care you do and don't want. And then the power of attorney is really the who. So who can make those decisions that you identified in your living will and part of your advance directive? If you're just feeling lost on this, as many people do, an elder law specialist can really help navigate this and help you with these forms and getting all of these documents in order. By having these in place, it really can help relieve a lot of anxiety, help prepare for future important discussions with family members as well. Because situations come up, nobody can predict the future, and it's really good to have these in place to give you direction on where to start and how to go about that process. The next slide is an even more challenging topic to talk about. It's finances and property. So first and foremost, talking about money is never easy. It can be very uncomfortable and awkward, and family and money expectations, the care receiver's financial situation, durable power of attorney, and estate planning, all these terms and ideas that they bring up a lot of emotions, and families often have unspoken rules and expectations about how they deal with money. Things like how to save, how to spend, who has control of finances, and how decisions are made. And when you become a caregiver for someone, money plays a really important role in the choices that you make about their care. And again, I can't say it enough. Talking about money can bring tension and can be difficult. And so it's really important to have these conversations early and often. Um, this would again go back to an elder law attorney or elder law specialist who can help with estate planning, and then also, like we talked about, durable power of attorney for healthcare, identifying who. You also can have a durable power of attorney specifically for finances and for your estate. And with that, we'll move on to the next slide. This one is just a little bit more information about the financial aspects associated with care planning. Something else that you can get worked on and prepared would be a will and a living trust. Again, we won't get too into this during our conversation for sake of time, and I don't want to bore you too much with this stuff, but just know it's important and there are resources to help you get these in place. On the next slide is talking about, now that you might have these documents in place, you know what you have going, you know who's going to be the power of attorney, all of that settled. And it's important to talk about what's going to be used to cover the expenses for your loved one's needs. What does health insurance cover? What does Medicare really pay for? What is home health? What is hospice? And what are all the costs associated with these different types of care and levels of care? And questions that you can ask during the time that you're planning these things are, how do we meet the current expenses? You can talk about what would be the expected highest level of care that somebody might need, and also the lowest level of care. What financial resources do we have that might be able to pay for this, and what other resources might be needed? Some of the most common ways that people pay for care would be income from employment, retirement savings, assets that they might have. Some people end up taking out reverse mortgages, or others have started a long-term care insurance plan. So there are some things that can help with the costs associated with care, and all those questions are great to ask and to try to figure out what benefits you already have and how they can help. And we'll talk more about community resources as well later in our talk today. So we've talked about the importance of getting a diagnosis, and we've talked about the importance of getting healthcare wishes and financial plans in place. And now we're going to move on to getting others involved. So again, caregiving can be really isolating, and it can feel like a really heavy burden when you're doing it alone. And as a caregiver, you may not know how to bring in other people. And as someone who knows a caregiver, you may not be sure how to help. And so this section, we're hoping, will help you understand where you can start in terms of getting others involved in your caregiving journey and providing support for not just you, but for the care receiver as well. So on the next slide, we'll go over family meetings. And so it's really important to try to bring your family and close friends together with your loved one if possible. Again, that's not always possible, but if it is, have your loved one there too to discuss care plans and to collaborate together. Review tasks that need to be completed as part of the care plan and see who might be willing to offer support to help lighten the load of caregiving. Be sure to discuss any concerns or questions that your family might have. And as the primary caregiver, a big part of this is going to be accepting what assistance your friends and family are offering, even if it's not exactly what you had in mind. And so now we've talked about having a family meeting, but what does that look like? What kind of things do you discuss? And, where do you even begin with that? And so on the next slide, a great place to start is to talk about what's been going on with the latest report from your loved one's medical team. Have there been any updates? Let's say you were trying to get a diagnosis. Was one given? Have medications been changed? And are there any changes in the treatment plan for your loved one? The next slide talks more about things that you can share about. And so during a family meeting, there's a lot of feelings that go into being a caregiver. This is emotional stuff that we're dealing with. It's very intimate, it's very personal, and you're really in a space where a lot of things come up, and we come into being a caregiver with our own histories, our own backgrounds, our own relationships, and so it can be complicated. And so it's a great time to talk about feelings related to the illness and caregiving. You can talk about your fears about death and dying or being overwhelmed, sadness, confusion, anger, guilt, shame. I mean, these are all really normal and common reactions that can be associated with caregiving. And so, it's really better to talk about those things and express what's going on than have to hold all of that in. The next one, we were talking about so daily caregiving needs. This is more about what is the day-to-day care going to look like for the person you're providing care to? Where are they going to live? Who can they move in with? Who has time and can help provide some care? And what other things might be available that can provide help to us? So what is it going to look like on a day-to-day basis? Who's doing what? What needs to happen? All of those types of things. And then on the next slide, we are touching base again about financial concerns. So during your family meeting, talking about what are the costs associated with this, or if family members are still working, how much time can people afford to miss, what other financial help might be available, and again, who's making these decisions? The power of attorney, the advanced healthcare directive, and really what support role does each person want to play? And also on the next slide, so we talked about, what is it going to look like day to day? And then again, so what kind of support does the primary caregiver need? So we've talked a lot about what the care receiver needs, what level of care, what type of care, how are we going to pay for that? And then something that we haven't talked about yet, and we missed a little bit, in all of this is often, what about the primary caregiver? And so talking about the need for respite, which is a break from caregiving, talking about help with meals and shopping, laundry, cleaning, and another really important one is emotional support. Like we talked about a slide or two ago, is all those emotions, anger, guilt, shame, having somebody that you can actually talk to. And a trick when it comes to providing support to somebody is asking them, are we talking about solutions here, or are we just talking about support? And that right there will really help a lot of conversations, because sometimes we're not looking for an answer, we're just looking for somebody to talk to that understands. Also, more practical things, help with chores. Will there be somebody who's available to take our loved one to the doctor? Is somebody going to handle all their appointments? Is somebody going to handle finances? How can we split things up? And on the next slide is talking about future a little bit more too. How will caregiving and support needs change as your loved one declines and their illness progresses? Problem solving, having a list of tasks that need to be done, and having summaries, and almost, how when you have those work meetings and you had to do minutes and follow up like that, do that. Have a written summary so that everybody knows what's going on, everybody's up to date. And we just covered a lot. All this would not be done in one family meeting. It would be I'd almost bet that it would just be impossible to cover all of these issues in one meeting. So additional meetings are going to be needed, and they'll be helpful. When planning meetings, try to make sure you have a clear timetable, a definite beginning and end, and try to stick to that, because if meetings get to be too long, fatigue sets in and minds wander, and it may not be as productive, and people might resist coming to future meetings. So really, the big thing is try to come to a consensus with each meeting. You may have to compromise and put these things in writing so that we can all, reflect and look back and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And the next slide, the last part of getting others involved. And these are just 3 big questions. If you really just don't even know where to start, not sure what to do, think about, what are you doing that other people might be able to help with? Also, what have you given up because you have too much to do? And what are you doing that you might not need to do? Sometimes we put extra pressure on ourselves that we need to be the perfect caregiver. And so what are some things that maybe you could let go of to free up some of your time? And as hard as this is to believe, it's true. We start to get control by giving it up. So letting other people help, letting other people in will be beneficial for you and help you prevent caregiver burnout. And so the next topic that we wanted to talk about, and you're more than halfway done, you guys are doing a great job, we're getting there, is community resources. And so this was something that, like we talked about, you might have some resources available to you through your income or a retirement plan or long-term care. But there are other programs that might be able to provide support as well. And so on the next slide, we're going to talk about government programs. So your loved one might qualify for benefits that come from the government that cover costs and may either be low cost to you or free. The big one that we often ask about right away is Medi-Cal. In other states, this is called Medicaid, but here we call it Medi-Cal. And this can be full scope, meaning there's no cost associated with your Medi-Cal. You might have a share of cost. And there's also, these smaller kind of subsections of Medi-Cal that not as many people know about, but things like spousal impoverishment protection, something that's designed to help when a spouse is caring for a spouse. And so you may not be sure if you qualify, but it's worth asking. There's also supplemental security income, and another huge resource for caregivers is IHSS, which stands for In-Home Supportive Services. And that is essentially hours that can be used for caregiving. With these programs, applications are complicated, they can be time consuming. And so again, if you're trying to figure all this out on your own, take a step back because there is help, I promise. Some of the help that's out there would be your local community legal aid. And there are also for-profit agencies that help with seeing what type of resources and programs your loved one or you might be eligible for. But definitely reach out to your local community legal aid and they can help you get started with determining eligibility for these programs. On the next slide, some other free services and resources that might be available to you would be if you're part of a faith organization, your faith community might have grants or day programs or emotional support that you can use as a caregiver to help on your journey. And then, way back in the first section, we talked about getting a diagnosis. And so once you have your diagnosis for your loved one, pretty much every diagnosis out there has its own disease organizations. And oftentimes these disease organizations can provide support, sometimes financially, sometimes with advocacy, sometimes it's support groups or resources that are really specifically geared towards the situation that you're dealing with. There are also hospitals and health plans generally will have a senior services department or a care management program. And here at St. Jude, we have a senior services program as well that can help with some of these things. There are also private nonprofit agencies. And then, of course, there are caregiver resource centers throughout the state. So again, we're one of 11 and we're here to provide support, and all our services here are free. We are not income-based, we are needs-based here. On the next slide, we're going to talk about some additional resources. I won't go through all of these, but just know that these things are here and they are available to help. If you're really lost, not sure what to do, at least in Orange County, and a lot of other counties as well, have 211. So you may be familiar with 411 for general information, and 211 is specifically for social services and resources and support. Another one that I did want to make sure we talked about on here, because most of our clientele and many of you that are watching may be dealing with memory loss and your loved one having dementia or Alzheimer's or another form of a cognitive impairment. And Alzheimer's Association has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week helpline that you can contact. And you can contact them for almost anything, whether it's just general resources or if your loved one is exhibiting a lot of behaviors and you're just not sure what to do or where to turn and need some help and support, please call them. The number's here on the screen, and then I will also say it out loud for you, and that's 800-272-3900. And that's the Alzheimer's Association 24/7 helpline. On the next slide, we talked about how challenging being a caregiver can be. And so we wanted to include mental health resources, and these can be used for you as the caregiver. And oftentimes these can also be used for the care receiver if they also need some more support and, that emotional component where they're dealing with a lot of loss. You're dealing with a lot of loss. And so these are all programs that, again, are free and can help provide you with that emotional support. And on that topic of the difficulties of caregiving and needing support and bringing people together, we're getting to our last part of our program today. And that is, like I said earlier, it's last, but it is the very opposite of least. This next section and on the next slide is caring for you too. This cannot be emphasized enough how important you are as the caregiver. So on the next slide, we'll talk about your health. So being a caregiver affects everything. I mean, it affects your emotional health, your physical health, your overall well-being. And this is a lot of high stress. It's shown that anywhere from 20 to 50%, and some studies even show more, that caregivers have been diagnosed with depression. It's really unfortunate that it's common, but it is. So it's not that you're doing anything wrong if you're having a difficult time or you're feeling anxious or depressed. Unfortunately, it is normal. And really the combination of loss, prolonged stress, physical demands of caregiving, vulnerabilities that come with aging. All these things place you at risk for significant health problems. And it's not just older caregivers that are putting their health at risk. It's, there's a lot of caregivers who are a sandwich generation or younger caregivers. And you might be juggling caring for your parents while you're also working and raising kids. And everybody in this role really does face an increased risk for depression, chronic illnesses, and a possible decline in the quality of life overall. Some of the things that are affected and you might notice or have been through as a caregiver, and I can't see any of you, but I'm sure if I could and I said, raise your hand if this has happened to you, I think there'd probably be a lot of hands up. You might have experienced sleep deprivation, poor eating habits, failing to exercise, and failure to stay in bed when you're sick. You might be postponing or failing to make your own medical appointments. You may be dealing with social isolation and financial stress. And, caregiving really can be an emotional roller coaster. On one hand, caring for your family member demonstrates love and commitment and can be extremely rewarding. But on the other hand, exhaustion, worry, inadequate resources, and continuous care demands are very, very stressful. So that's why, caregivers, again, are more likely to have chronic illnesses than non-caregivers. And those things can include high cholesterol, high blood pressure, being overweight. And again, up to 50-60% of caregivers can be diagnosed as clinically depressed. And so on that topic, so what do we do about it? How can we take care of ourselves? So the next slide is talking about, again, caregiving includes caring for me. Caring for yourself not only will benefit you, but it really will benefit the person that you're caring for. And you really can thrive, not just survive as a caregiver. Really getting started on this is a big part of it is identifying personal barriers. Many times we have attitudes and beliefs from that form our personal barriers, and they stand in the way of caring for ourselves. For instance, not taking care of yourself might be a lifelong pattern, and taking care of others just may have been the easier option. But as a family caregiver, you have to ask yourself, what good will I be to the person I'm caring for if I become ill? Or even what happens if I die? What if I can't do this because I'm not taking care of myself? And so breaking old patterns and and overcoming obstacles is really not easy, but it can be done. The first task to removing those personal barriers to self-care is identifying what's in your way. So some questions that you can ask yourself are, do you think you're being selfish if you put your needs first? Or is it frightening to think about your own needs? And what is that fear about? Do you have trouble asking for what you need? Or do you feel inadequate if you feel like you have to ask for help? Do you feel like you have to prove that you're worthy of your care recipient's affection? And do you do too much as a result of feeling that way? And some really common misconceptions that increase stress and get in the way of good self-care are things like telling yourself, I am responsible for my parents' health. Or if I don't do it, no one will. If I do it right, I'll get the love and affection and respect that I deserve. Or our family always takes care of their own. And a very, very common misconception and a promise that a lot of caregivers make is saying things like, I promised my father I would always take care of my mother. And because we base our behaviors on our thoughts and our beliefs, attitudes and misconceptions like those that we just talked about can cause caregivers to continually attempt to do what cannot be done and to control what cannot be controlled. This results in feelings of continued failure and frustration, and oftentimes an inclination to ignore your own needs. So try to ask yourself what might be getting in your way and preventing you from taking care of yourself. On the next slide, so focusing on staying or getting connected. So we've talked about, getting all this support in place for your loved one, but asking who is holding you up. Is it friends? What about other family or support groups? And ways that you can increase your self-care and increase your connectedness is accepting help. So be prepared. Have a list of things that other people can do to help you out, um, and let the person helping choose what they want to do. So, for instance, let's say you have a friend that loves cooking. Let them cook for you. Even though it might be more helpful to you if they would do laundry, but sometimes it's taking what you can get. And that when somebody's doing something that they love, and they're more likely to do it more often and help you out. Also, focus on what you are able to provide. So it's normal to feel guilty sometimes, but you have to understand no one is the perfect caregiver. You need to believe that you're doing the best that you can and making the best decisions that you can at any given time. Part of that is setting realistic goals. Break large tasks into smaller steps that can be done one at a time, and prioritize, make lists, and establish a daily routine. If you need to, say no to requests that are draining. Things like hosting a holiday party or throwing an event at your house. Just if you have to say no, say no. Get connected, join a support group, seek social support and set personal health goals. See your doctor. Again, oftentimes caregivers put themselves last and don't take care of their own health needs. And a big part of preventing burnout and getting yourself help that you might need is respite care. It can be really hard to think about leaving your loved one in somebody else's care, but taking a break is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. This also will help the person that you're caring for. Respite can look like having an in-home caregiver come in and spend time with your loved one so that you can take a break. There are day programs and adult day healthcare centers where your loved one can go for the day, giving them a lot of stimulation and activity while giving you a break. And there's short-term options as well, out-of-home options. There's board-in cares, assisted living, nursing homes that can be done on an as-needed short-term basis where it's not a permanent decision yet. And the next slide, again, you guys are going to start charging me for telling you this, but taking time for yourself is not being selfish. By taking care of yourself is how you prevent burnout. That's how you keep doing what you're doing. And if you're not sure where to start, take a look at this picture here, 50 ways to take a break. There's a lot of simple, easy to do things that we can accomplish, because if we have huge goals, things that, I need to go on a 4-week vacation to Europe, that just may not be possible. It just may not happen. And so having these things be realistic, things you can actually accomplish. And when it comes to burnout, recognize your warning signs early. These things might include feeling irritable, having sleep problems, or feeling forgetful. And don't wait to make changes. Do that before you're feeling overwhelmed. Try to identify your sources of stress. This could be family disagreements, having too much to do, feeling inadequate, or not being able to say no. And identify what you can and cannot change. Remember, we can only change ourselves. We cannot change anyone else. And when we try to change things that we don't have control over, it really only increases our sense of frustration. So you can ask yourself, what do I have some control over? What can I change? And realize that even small changes can make a big difference sometimes. And so if there's anything that you take away from today, a big, huge, and that's why, like I said, last but not least is taking care of yourself. And so on the next slide, just to kind of wrap up our conversation today, and, again, thank you for your patience and bearing with me through all this information. Again, I know this might have been a little overwhelming and a lot of things to think about, but it's a place to start and things for you to consider, and you will be able to watch this again or review it. But really, when it comes down to it, I wanted to share these 10 tips for family caregivers. The first, seek support from other caregivers. You are not alone. Take care of your health so that you can be strong enough to take care of your loved one. Accept offers of help and suggest specific things people can do to help you. learn how to effectively communicate with doctors. And I couldn't emphasize 5 more if I tried, but caregiving is hard work, so take respite breaks often. Watch out for signs of depression and don't delay in getting professional help when you need it. Be open to technology and other things that might help you care for your loved one, and organize medical information so it's up to date and easy to find, and make sure your legal documents are in order. And again, 5 is very important, and so is 10. Give yourself credit for doing the best job that you can in one of the toughest jobs there is. I've talked to many caregivers, and they've had executive jobs, they've run companies, they've been deployed in wars, and almost every single person says this is the most difficult thing that they've ever done. So give yourself credit for what you're doing, because you really are doing an amazing job, and caregiving is tough. With that is the end of our presentation today. If you have questions or you need more information on any of the things that we've talked about, or you're interested in becoming a client with us, or doing a support group, or finding out what our classes are, please don't hesitate to contact us. Again, my name is Rachel Smythe. I'm a family consultant here at the Caregiver Resource Center, OC. Our contact information is here on the screen, and if you are not local, you can call our toll-free number, which is 800-543-8312. And if you're in the Orange County area, feel free to call us at our local number, which is 714-446-5030. And so again, thank you so much. I know that as a caregiver, you don't have a lot of time for yourself, and we don't take it lightly that you chose to spend about an hour with us today. So please, I hope this was beneficial to you, and call us if you have any questions or need support. And thank you for watching today.